We can't have boomer energy in a future-facing brand. That's what the CEO's niece said. 27, zero experience, and a LinkedIn full of vibes. She said it like she was curing cancer. I was standing 10 feet away, watching my career get canceled by a slogan. My name is Elliot Warren, 52. Head of Global Technology Licensing, until about 3 minutes ago. I spent 18 years at Kestrel Systems, back when we were 6 people working out of a converted warehouse in Baltimore. Back when our biggest win was landing a server contract with a mid-sized bank in St. Louis. Now it's global. Brussels, Singapore, São Paulo. Now we get invited to summits where everyone wears badges and nobody says what they mean. They call me the bridge. I don't do keynotes. I don't post TED Talk clips with thoughts in the caption, but I've sat in government offices listening to officials speak in 5 languages and 3 agendas, and somehow I got them to sign. You don't close a $970 million licensing agreement with charm, you do it with time, with trust, and a few well-placed silences. A week ago, I shook hands with the CEO of a European defense tech consortium. 11 months of negotiations. Their concerns: overreach, enforceability, cross-border liability. Their deal breaker: data translation and encryption across allied platforms. Our solution, my team's solution, fixed that. A protocol we built 3 years ago, filed, registered, patent number US 10493082. And I'm listed as co-inventor, legally, permanently. And that patent, its use, replication, or sublicensing, requires written consent from all named inventors. My clause, my condition. The company never removed me, never substituted me. I reminded legal, quietly, in writing. They left it unread. Bold move. Her name is Avery. Officially, Strategic Transformation Lead. Unofficially, the CEO's niece who read a McKinsey article and decided legacy staff were the virus. Her resume? A failed podcast, 2 logo refreshes, and a 6-month retreat in Bali where she advised purpose-driven collectives. She said I was a legacy node. Said we needed platform-agnostic minds with disruptive empathy. That one made someone choke on coffee. She's big on human-first design, big on TikTok explainers with lo-fi beats. Doesn't know what a licensing clause looks like, but she can design a slide deck that makes it irrelevant. The sad part? She actually believes it. The lobby hadn't changed in a decade. Same glass panels, same recycled air. A digital kiosk played a looping video of our founder talking about trust. Security gave me the same nod they always did, but this time it felt like punctuation. Outside it had started to rain. Of course it had. That evening I didn't rage post, didn't write a cryptic goodbye. I made tea, sat down, opened the envelope. 3 items. A thank you letter from the CEO, unsigned, copy-paste energy. A fresh printout of the licensing agreement. Still warm. A photocopy of the USPTO filing, patent number US 10493082. My name, circled, not highlighted, circled in black ink. My own handwriting, old habit. I unfolded the page again. My name sat there, clean, centered, permanent. It didn't glow. It didn't accuse. It just was. Strange how a signature could feel louder than a voice. I didn't cross it out. I didn't touch it at all. Sometimes power isn't about what you do, but what you let sit. I paused at the line with my name. It looked colder now, like it didn't belong there anymore, or maybe like it never did. No pride, just precision. I refolded the paper along its original crease, tight, sharp, filed it under, pending moves. I turned off the lights, stepped outside, and checked my phone. One new notification, a calendar invite, not from Kestrel. Just a time, a place, and a subject line, contingency proposal. I clicked, accept. There was a time when my phone didn't stop ringing. If a region was stalling, they called me. If a regulator pushed back, they called me. If a deal was on the table but the language got too dense for legal to parse, they called me. Even the old CEO, Rothman, used to say, if Elliot doesn't sign off, it's not real yet. We weren't friends, but we trusted each other. He'd call me into his office without a calendar invite, no preamble, just a glance, a nod, and a post-it with 3 bullet points. That was his version of a strategy session. It worked. Then he stepped back. Still on the board, still collecting shares, but no longer involved in daily operations. That's when everything started to get redesigned. It began small. Our monthly licensing sync turned into a future strategy pod. They replaced my whiteboard with a touchscreen nobody knew how to calibrate. Someone changed the slide template colors to pastel gradients, and the company values became verbs: empathize, elevate, disrupt. Avery arrived 2 weeks after the rebranding. She didn't introduce herself at first, just hovered in meetings, taking notes on a tablet with a keyboard that clicked too loud. She never asked technical questions, only optics. How would this read on a deck? Or, can we humanize this touch point? The younger analysts adored her. She remembered everyone's dogs. She shared micro wins in Slack with emoji reactions. She called my negotiation briefs dense and asked if we had a Notion board. I asked if we were still a tech company. She laughed like I made a dad joke. Maybe I had. One day I found out she'd rescheduled a cross-border client call I was leading, without telling me. I showed up to the Zoom and saw her already mid-sentence, referencing a document I hadn't approved. When I asked afterward, she said, "Oh, I thought you were tagged. My bad." Another time, she corrected my use of the word vendor in a briefing, said it was extractive language. I stared at her for 3 seconds longer than I should have. She stared back like she'd just taught me something important. It escalated quietly. That's how they do it now. My name stopped appearing on internal memos. A licensing report went out to the board without my edits. An old mentee I trusted asked me, nervously, if I was still owning the negotiations with NORAD-E. I said yes. He looked relieved, then said nothing else. The day I knew it was shifting was the day of the Tallinn Roundtable. That event was mine. I built it from nothing, turned it into a quarterly hub for global licensing alignment. I'd curated the list of attendees myself, 2 from the UN, 1 from an AI ethics consortium, and 3 data infrastructure leads from NATO-aligned nations. The calendar invite came from Avery. Subject: Legacy Framework Review, EU Compliance Edition. No mention of me, just an FYI. All materials reviewed and approved by the Strategic Office. Strategic, not legal, not licensing. Strategic. I was still on the thread, still CC'd. But no one expected me to speak. The final blow wasn't loud. It came in the break room, 2 days before the termination. Avery was talking to Kira from Investor Relations, loud enough for me to hear but soft enough to deny intent. She said, "We're just modernizing, that's all. Some people are more attached to control than to innovation." Then added, "Besides, he's been here, 20 years? That's like 3 startups ago." I didn't interrupt. I stirred my tea, walked out. But that evening, something caught my eye. A message. Not from Avery. Not from legal. From a contact I hadn't heard from in months. High clearance, defense side, East Coast. The text read, "Why is someone else presenting the framework next week?" I didn't answer, just stared at it, long enough to realize they had no idea I'd been removed, and long enough to know that if they didn't know, others wouldn't either. The event was called Future Proof 2030, hosted at some brutalist convention space in Lower Manhattan. Glass walls, LED uplighting, full vegan menu. They'd rented a graffiti artist to live paint on stage between panels. It was all very curated. I wasn't invited. Didn't need to be. I'd seen the pitch deck. Not because they sent it to me, because someone in procurement forwarded it by accident. Same fonts, same boilerplate, same framework. Mine, but they'd renamed it. Project Polaris. Sounded like an AI startup crossed with a meditation app. I watched the live stream from a cafe 4 blocks away. Double espresso, no milk, corner seat. No ceremony, just position. The host called it A landmark moment for public-private synergy in secure architecture. Avery took the stage in minimalist heels and a blazer too big for her shoulders. She started strong, talked about ethics, transparency, how our generation builds bridges, not silos. People nodded. Someone clapped too early. One of those rooms. Then came the demo. On screen, animated flowcharts, smart cities, blockchain verification, federated compliance layers, polished enough to fool anyone who didn't build the thing. But I had, and I knew what came next. The trigger slide, the one that initiated the validation handshake, the one that required the co-author key. They clicked. Nothing happened. Then a loading symbol, then a flicker, then a red box. Missing cryptographic authority, EW, section 14C. The room stilled. Avery blinked, then smiled like she was in control. Seems we're having a delay on the credential side, probably a sync issue with the test environment. Except they were on live, and she knew it. Someone near the front raised a hand. Gray suit, Defense Liaison Group. I thought this was final. You're still testing? Avery faltered, looked off stage, then down. We'll just pause for a moment. Feed cut. I refreshed twice, stayed black. 3 rows back, one of the older VPs whispered something and got up. Another followed. The front row stayed rigid, eyes forward but unfocused. My phone buzzed. Lynn, board member, old school, knife in the smile type. Can you come in Monday? No hello, no apology, just tactical positioning. 2 minutes later, another message. This one from a Polaris client, not a big one, but loud. Just saw the stream. You really weren't involved? Was told you signed off. Can we talk? Third buzz, internal legal. Request for clarification on scope of co-author enforcement rights regarding Clause 14C. Clarification. After they erased me. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my notes app, typed one line. Monday, 10 a.m., room 42E. Then forwarded it to my attorney. No CCs, no emoji, no boomer energy, just legacy. Then a fourth message came in, from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, Ethan, ex-VP of Systems. It just said, they tried to rebuild the handshake with an old prototype. Didn't work. They're scrambling. Of course they were. They didn't understand what they copied, only what it looked like. Fifth buzz. Reporter. Tech columnist. Error on section 14C. Quote for attribution or off record? I put the phone down, looked around the cafe. 3 people typing. 1 Zoom call in progress. Nobody knew that 5 blocks away, a $970 million contract just ruptured. Not because I sabotaged anything, because they forgot how systems are built, in layers. And I was layer 0. One more email appeared, this one from another board member forwarded by mistake. Can we pursue workaround if EW doesn't cooperate? 2 words in red. Unlikely, legally risky. I smiled for the first time that morning, and just before closing my laptop I saw Avery's name trending on Twitter. Polaris fail. I finished my espresso, ripped the event's napkin in half, tossed it in the trash. Then I walked out. Some people play power. Some people hold it. Monday, 10 a.m., room 42E. I arrived early. Security scanned my ID like I was still on payroll. 2 floors up through the glass, I spotted Avery and Elliot Nash mid-argument. She had her tablet up. He pointed at something, frustrated. I didn't need to hear it. Their body language was fluent. Cracks. Reception sent me to the smaller boardroom. No windows, no branding, just bottled water and stale ambition. Inside, Lynn from the board, corporate counsel, and 2 execs I didn't recognize. Avery entered late. Elliot followed, composed but coiled. No one said my name. They opened with tone. We're here to acknowledge your contributions to the Polaris Foundation and formalize next steps toward alignment. Corporate seduction in PowerPoint cadence. Then, A licensing contract, a financial offer, reflective of market value. NDA covering past and future disclosures. Reinstatement as technical advisor emeritus. No interviews, no statements, no fuss. Passive co-author. Decorated ghost. I glanced at the document but didn't open it. You're asking me to fix what you broke, I said, quietly, and pretend none of this happened. Lynn met my eyes. We're asking you to protect the company's future, and your own. I tilted my head. And if I decline? Legal counsel spoke. We'll need to reassess exposure, but we believe cooperation serves all interests. I nodded, slowly. Avery cleared her throat. I know we clashed, but Polaris still needs you. You designed its bones. I didn't look at her, just said, you didn't just remove me from the system. You deleted my access to the sandbox server. You knew what that meant. Silence. Then, that was an IT miscommunication, she said. I finally smiled. Good. Then let's call it poetic. I stood. Thanks for the clarity. As I left, I passed the hallway where our company's founding principles plaque still hung. My name was etched below the mission statement. Avery's wasn't. I took the elevator down and walked east, past 2 old offices I helped open, past the coffee shop I'd closed funding rounds in. Destination, Wendell and Knox, defense contractor. Quiet, serious, ex-client. The receptionist still remembered me. Ethan's in. Been asking about you since last Thursday. She smiled like we'd never stopped doing business. He met me in the hallway. We saw the stream. Impressive misfire. Got something for us? I handed him an envelope. Inside, Clause 14C. Co-author key. Exclusive rights. Non-transferable. He raised an eyebrow. Your move? Not yet, I said. Just tightening the board. As we walked, his assistant appeared. You've got someone from Commerce Online too. Wants to know if Polaris has been restructured. Ethan paused. Looked at me. You think they're leaking? I shrugged. Or someone's hedging early. We shook hands. I left. 3 hours later, I got a call from a journalist, Tech Law Beat. Anonymous source says you were cut illegally from Polaris IP. Want to comment? I didn't answer. Instead, I texted Lynn. You might want to lock Clause 22. Discovery window's still open. 10 minutes later, I got a call from someone unexpected, Avery's assistant. Ms. Lee would like to meet privately. She says it's off record. I agreed. Cafe, downtown, no suits, just coffee and reputation. She arrived in sunglasses, hoodie, overcorrected casual. Thanks for coming. You didn't give me much choice. She looked around. I didn't want the board involved. I raised an eyebrow. What's the ask? I want to pivot Polaris, cut Elliot out, reinvent the model with the right validation. You. I leaned back. You're orchestrating a coup. I'm protecting the tech, and yeah, I'm tired of babysitting arrogance. She slid a USB across the table. Encrypted, internal emails, meeting recordings. You'll find Lynn's been shopping Polaris IP to third parties without disclosure. I didn't touch it. Instead, I asked, why me? You built it clean. You never needed the narrative, just the system. And if I'm being honest, he's never respected what he didn't understand. I stood to leave. You were part of this mess, Avery. I know. I paused, looked at the drive. I'm not here to choose sides. I'm here to choose timing. She nodded, eyes sharp. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. Message from Elliot. We need to talk now. And right beneath it, another from Lynn. Clause 14C is triggering chatter in DC. Can we align messaging? I locked the phone, then unlocked it, then typed one reply. We'll talk after they do. Tuesday, Washington, D.C. Not for show, just an invitation. A senior official from the Department of Commerce met me in a secure conference room. Small flag, No press. 2 chairs, legal pads, a recorder blinking red. "You're not under investigation," he said. "But your signature on Clause 14C disrupted a critical export deal. We need context." I gave him clarity, not commentary. He nodded. "Your silence is part of what's making noise." By noon, Polaris issued a statement. "While we respect Mr. Anders' historical involvement, his recent behavior reflects a personal agenda, not the company's mission." It read like it was written by a lawyer on Red Bull. Avery wasn't quoted, neither was the CEO. But tech journalists had already received internal documents, screenshots of private chats between Avery and Elliot, sarcastic digs, power grabs, and one brutal line from Avery: "We just need him gone before Q3. Anyone over 50 makes investors nervous." That evening, an encrypted message reached me through an old contact. It was a flagged contract draft, unsigned, dated 3 weeks before my firing. Avery had approached a shell firm to purchase a stake in Polaris's patent portfolio. My name was scrubbed. Clause 14C was missing entirely. It wasn't just corporate negligence. It was attempted theft. Wednesday morning, Polaris tried to close a last-minute licensing deal with Zenith Corp. It collapsed. Zenith's lawyers cited unresolved co-authorship on proprietary IP, referencing 14C directly. Elliot flew to New York, met with a litigation firm. They declined representation after reviewing the patent's authorship record. A federal judge issued a memo. Until both inventors authorize the license, substitution is not permissible. Mr. Anders' signature remains legally required. Desperate, Polaris filed a motion to challenge my status as co-author, claimed I had abandoned the invention. A quiet but dangerous move. They didn't expect my original lab journals, time-stamped, witnessed, and scanned. Filed years ago, stored offline. Their motion was denied in under 36 hours. The board started to splinter. That night, a journalist from TechGate found me at a parking garage downtown. "Someone claims you mishandled a compliance report in '09. Care to comment?" I didn't flinch. "Do you believe them?" He didn't answer. The next morning, the firm behind the tip issued a public apology. Turns out the source was a fired intern, coached by Avery. On LinkedIn, Lynn's role shifted to strategic advisor on sabbatical. Her corner office was empty by noon. Thursday. I was invited quietly to return as co-CTO, not by the board, by Polaris's original institutional investor, who feared the entire IPO timeline was now compromised. He asked for a meeting in person, private office, no aides. "Frankly," he said, "this isn't about you, it's about the valuation drop." I stayed silent. He opened a drawer, took out a letter, passed it across the desk like it was radioactive. "We need a grown-up in the room again." The letter offered back pay, control of the patent again, and full autonomy on public messaging. They even attached a campaign, the Polaris Reconciliation, Back to the Future with Our Founders. I left the letter on his desk. At breakfast, my son looked up from his cereal box. "Are you going to be famous now?" I raised an eyebrow. He clarified, "Like, interviews, TV, internet." I sipped my coffee. "Famous people chase microphones. I'd rather chase peace." He nodded slowly. Then, "Do they know you're not done yet?" I didn't answer, but the corner of my mouth did something close. Friday. I walked 6 blocks to a small brownstone. The door opened before I knocked twice. Gray sweater, quiet eyes, the original founder. She hadn't aged much. Still had the habit of glancing at your shoes before making eye contact. I heard Polaris's burning. It was always dry timber. She tilted her head. "First time you've come to me. Ever." I nodded. Maybe I was wrong about who had vision. She blinked, unsure if it was praise or apology. "You here to gloat?" I shook my head. "I'm here to rebuild." Polaris didn't go to court. They went quiet. The board approved a revised agreement with Zenith Corp using a parallel structure, one that kept the license alive but entirely severed from me. Clause 14C remained untouched. I retained legal co-ownership. They retained the right to move forward, as long as my name never appeared again. I signed off on the silence, not on the product. Avery disappeared from public view. No LinkedIn updates, no Medium essays. 6 months later, an investigative podcast claimed she'd moved to Amsterdam and was working on ethical AI policy. I didn't click the link. Elliot took a consulting gig at a firm known for recycling old executives into ghost roles. Lynn was last seen posting motivational quotes under stock images of wolves. Polaris launched the campaign anyway, without me. Back to the future with our founders. It trended for 3 days, then was quietly pulled. Turns out their founders refused to participate. I never made a statement. Investors speculated. Was I blacklisted? Bought out? Bitter? For a few weeks, I was the subject of opinion pieces and think tank events. Will the next generation of engineers self-erase like Anders? Is there dignity in disappearing? Clause 14C, a testament to ego or ethics? I read none of them. In April, I received a small envelope, no return address. Inside, a thank you note handwritten on coarse paper. No signature, just this. I only stayed because you did. I left the day after they fired you. Now I'm building something with purpose. You taught me what that looks like. I folded it once and placed it inside a hardbound notebook I kept for moments like that. My son kept asking if we were moving. No, I said. Just cleaning out noise. He didn't get it, but he accepted it. When I asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, he paused, then said, someone who doesn't need to be in the photo to be in the story. I didn't return to tech. Not the kind that needs pitch decks and shareholders. I started working from a small cabin 3 hours from the city. No reception, just satellite broadband. The space wasn't much. Bare drywall, a folding table, second-hand monitors. But it worked. I wasn't building a company. I was building a system, not for profit, for resilience. A protocol designed to keep marginalized researchers from being erased. A decentralized, time-stamped archive, proof of contribution, proof that the minds who build things matter, whether or not they hold the microphone. In August, I received an email from an old rival. Not Avery, not Polaris. Someone who once tried to outbid me for a small patent 14 years ago. We hadn't spoken since. The subject line, no one saw that endgame coming. I replied with 2 words, not over. In September, I was invited to speak at a panel titled Legacy Beyond Leadership. I declined. They asked why. I told them, I don't lead, I build. Let the ones who crave applause sit under the lights. One morning near winter, I found a cracked photograph wedged inside a box of old documents. It showed the Polaris team from 15 years ago. All of us fresh-faced, crowded into a too-small lab with cables running across the floor like vines. In the corner, blurred, was her, the original founder. She wasn't smiling, just focused. I stared at it for a long time, then burned it. Not out of spite, out of closure. The next week she and I met again. Same cafe, same silence between words. We didn't talk about rebuilding this time, just about what we would never allow again. Final morning. I walked to the edge of my property. The satellite dish buzzed softly in the breeze. I buried the hard drive under a flat stone, not out of paranoia, just principle. I'd already made copies, distributed them to 10 people I trusted, none of whom wanted credit. Then I stepped back, dusted my hands, and exhaled. The work wasn't done, but the noise was. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.